Welcome to the Conquer Your Battlefield podcast, where we come together to discuss some of the more significant struggles and metaphorical battlefields we've faced along our journeys and share some insight on how we've conquered them. I'm JD McGibney, and today I'll be chatting with one of the most well put together, centered, confident, and talented people that I personally know. He shreds on the guitar for the band Seven Kingdoms. He is the world's best tour manager and a man that has grinded his way through the music industry and earned every bit of success that he has achieved. Today, I'll be talking with the one, the only Camden Cruz. How you doing today, Camden?
What's up, man? I don't know if I can hold up to that intro, man. That's a lot.
Man, you definitely live up to that and more. Literally one of my favorite human beings on this planet.
Thank you very much, buddy.
Yeah, thank you. Today, we are going to be talking about body image. In Western society, it isn't uncommon to hear that some people struggle with poor body image. There's a lot of focus placed upon our physical appearance in order to establish our identities, portray our confidence, show off our successes, convey our expertise, and attract romantic partners. Those who severely struggle with their body image may end up battling things like anorexia, bulimia, or body dysmorphic disorder to some degree. The exact definition of BDD, according to the Mayo Clinic, is a mental health condition in which you can't stop thinking about one or more perceived defects or flaws in your appearance. According to the International OCD Foundation, between 5 and 10 million people in the United States have BDD, and according to the National Library of Medicine, BDD is a rising concern among adolescents. Camden, having known you for several years at this point, I've watched your most recent fitness journey from the sidelines, and you've gotten into weightlifting and basically turned yourself into a modern metal Conan the Barbarian. And on top of that, you maintain a fairly healthy diet as well, as long as you're not on tour.
Yes.
Having spoken to you prior to this interview, you had mentioned that body image, specifically weight loss and diet, were two things that you've been struggling with for your entire life.
Yes.
What was the deciding factor for you that got you into bodybuilding specifically and to change your diet so drastically?
Well, I think weightlifting was always fun to me because I grew up racing motocross. So I guess this all starts from my early teens. I raced motocross and I was about to turn pro, but then I got hurt, picked up a guitar, and that's when that path took off that way. But back then, I didn't really have a ton of friends in school because I was always gone on the weekends. I never hung out from the time I was like 10 to 16 or 17, like it's a third of my life when you're 15 years old and you spend 5 years racing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like I did that for a very long time. And I was gone every weekend. We did the whole circuit. I trained. So I knew that you had to like exercise and lift and your body needed to be in condition, not as much as it is now in the sport. In the sport now, it's crazy. It's even like several steps beyond what it was back when I was doing it. But I was familiar with, you have to run. You have to keep yourself in check. You shouldn't be eating, cake and ice cream like every day during the week kind of thing. If you're racing, you know what I mean? It's going to affect your stats. But my parents never had a good idea, like a truly, not really scientific, but a really good idea of true nutrition. Mm-hmm. So that was something that I missed. Like I did the training, but I wasn't eating right the entire time. So I'd either be really skinny, almost not really skinny, like they call it skinny fat. It's just you have no muscle but you're thin.
Gotcha.
Because like my protein intake wasn't enough, or I wasn't lifting on top of just it's a mixture of things. Because like when you don't eat properly, even though you're eating like the right calories, if you eat bad calories, like it's still going to make you tired and exhausted. Your body's not going to be fed properly. So it's like a mixture of that. So like, I kind of wove in and out of the racing, the fitness kind of thing. And then when I stopped, because I was dieting so much, and I was always kind of like a chubby kid, mm-hmm. I guess. So, and then most of the kids that raced were really thin. So like, I didn't really know, or I didn't really have the patience, or a combination of both. I didn't have the tools, plus I didn't have the patience to truly like stick to a diet. I did one summer and I lost like probably 20 pounds in the summer or something like that. It's like, you buy a whole new fleet of clothes. That was the first time. But then, I kept it up a bit while I was racing. gotten at least into a little bit of a groove with, especially as I got faster and more serious in it. Like it really became like, I was training 4 or 5 times a week on the bike twice a week before the weekend hit. You know what I mean? But then that developed a whole, like, because I didn't know the nutrition, I just thought, it's like, oh, if I don't eat, you know what I mean? Like, ooh, I'll be able to weigh in for the day, and then like I'll go crazy. You know what I mean? So it's the whole kind of binge and then starve and then binge and starve. You know what I mean? And
which is something that like wrestlers in like high school tend to struggle with in general, where like they'll like do the same thing where they'll starve themselves and just not eat for like a day and a half.
Yeah, and it's funny because now exactly. Now, like, having kind of studied bodybuilding and nutrition, there's a way you can do that, but it's very meticulous. Like, that's how the bodybuilders get so shredded. They're essentially like, I mean, they're not starving themselves, but they're eating the bare minimum calorie to keep the shape that they're in, to get the fat off their body, so they have that real thin, like, the way I don't look right now kind of look. That's what I'm saying. Like, the most recent leanest journey I had, when I got to the smallest, I think was on the that tour in 2019, and I came home. That was the smallest I'd ever been.
Wow.
Like thinnest, lean wise, like I was 186 pounds when I got home. So I was just like,
you're pretty shredded at the end of that tour too. I remember you were pretty like,
but that's what I'm saying. Like, I was like, it's funny because like now, like, because I was just on tour for, like, we did the tour in September, we did the tour in November, December, then we toured again in March, April, May, June. I was gone. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. This year. So it's just like, I haven't physically been home to just eat right.
And being on tour, especially in the United States, is really difficult because it's really hard to get like healthy food, because all you have is like fast food everywhere.
Yeah. So I mean, I've definitely, like, just recently, like, I'm probably sitting at like 220, I'd imagine 225 maybe. But like, even though like I'm up, it's interesting having like allowed myself to put a little bit of weight back on. When it goes back on, it doesn't just go to my gut this time. I mean, it goes to my gut for sure, but like it spreads out, in different areas. So it's interesting having, I guess, done like what they would call a little bit of a bear mode for a couple months. You know what I mean?
Backing up,
just like while you're on tour. Yeah, but it's like, it's maybe interestingly, the one thing I guess that will make a segue into the conversation is weightlifting has helped me be okay with being a little bit thicker, I guess, because when you're eating right, if you're eating in a surplus of calories, but it's still healthy calories, you will put weight on, but your performance in the gym will go up. So like, I'm stronger than an ox now. Like, I'm stronger than I've ever been for the most part, even though I'm a little bit bigger. But like, my lifts, like my max lifts from all of the like 3 big lifts are like probably like 100 pounds more everywhere than they were like when you saw me last at 186 pounds.
That's crazy.
So just like that extra 40 pounds on me over the course of 3 years, I mean, it's fat and muscle at the same time, but just that mass on your body allows your body to move up in weight, especially if you're consistent training. And that's one thing. It's like, even though I haven't been as consistent with my diet, my training has always been like, I've always been very competitive, I guess. So the weightlifting really allowed me to like find something that, it doesn't taste right. Mm-hmm. So when you go into the gym, you can't necessarily eat the iron, I guess. But like, it gives me that competitive edge. I like being able to walk in somewhere and be strong. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It just makes you feel good, even if you're not as thin or you don't have a 6-pack. You know what I mean? Even if you don't have a 6-pack, if you go in and can bench 3 plates, you leave feeling pretty decent about yourself.
So you're saying like having that actual physical strength helps build like that self-confidence.
Just confidence in yourself, because you know that you're strong, and you know that you're stronger than just the average person that goes in and just goes into the gym twice a week to jog. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, and then one thing, it was always like, I always thought it's like, oh, I'm a man. Like, you should be able to lift your wife above your head, right? So just like, I remember like I took Sabrina's weight and I was like, that's my overhead press goal, my strict press goal. And I worked up until like I can lift Sabrina over my head a bunch of times.
So now reps, I'm just imagining you guys, like when the cameras are off, just doing that scene from like Dirty Dancing at the end now.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just like, that's what I'm saying. Like after having been through the roller coaster of it and still on it, like it's a never ending roller coaster. You know what I mean? I just told Sabrina I think I look like shit the other day, just because I do sometimes. You know what I mean? But then, what it takes. You don't let that beat you up like it used to. I guess the longer you do it, because then you know what it takes. Especially if like I've already done it. You know what I mean? I know what it takes. Just right now, I'm trying to find that like key goal that like really makes you stick with it. And the goals that, or not the goals, but the kind of, I don't know what the right word to say it is. It's like every time you go on like a fitness or a weight loss journey, you have to stay perfectly consistent, mostly on your diet, and the will that it takes. You have to have a thing, a reason, to why you're doing it. Because if you're like me, you know what I mean, you're happy, you're married, you're generally happy, you're married, you know what I mean. Especially now, it's just like, my wife's gonna love me if I have this slice of cheesecake or not. You know what I mean? This is like, the cheesecake's gonna make me lift really good tomorrow. You know what I mean? And matter of fact, when you diet, you get like, not necessarily just like lose all your strength, but like when you're dieting, it sucks because like you're in a deficit, so your body's kind of meticulously eating itself. If you're doing it correctly, you're eating a tiny little bit of you every day, because you're in a tiny little deficit every single day for months. And when you do that, it takes a good there's a transitional period. A lot of people don't realize, like, it's like, oh yeah, we're gonna talk about diet. You go to the grocery store, and then day two, like, you know what I mean, there's still leftovers in the fridge, you know what I mean. It's like, oh, let's just get rid of it, and you just end up eating it because it's gone then, right?
Yep.
I mean, I still do that, just like, oh, we got leftovers from Thanksgiving. I hate wasting food, you know what I mean? Because like there's starving people everywhere, you know what I mean? So it's just like, it's always a battle. The food is always going to be the problem. Always. It's never, I mean, I'm sure someone's going to have a problem, not with the food, and then more like going into the gym. But I think that's going to be generally, I would bet it would be generally more rare than people wanting to go to the gym and then just messing up their diet, essentially. You know what I mean? Because you could eat probably 2,000 calories of clean, balanced macros and still probably gain weight if you do absolutely nothing. You know what I mean? And depending on how tall you are and your activity level, like you just physically, you get up, and that's the only like sit up you do all day. And then you get out into a chair and you sit there, walk to the fridge to eat, walk back. Like there's a chance, you'll put weight on, even at what would be considered a diet. You know what I mean? If you're somebody else.
Yeah. Because I mean, if you're not expending all that energy, it's just kind of sitting there.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just,
So going back a little bit, you just recently said that like you're focusing on like the food aspect of this. And earlier you had mentioned that like when you were growing up, your parents didn't necessarily have the best understanding of proper nutrition. So that led to you basically having like a weird fluctuating like weight, whether it was like too thin or, you said you were a bit of a chubby kid. Do you feel that fluctuating like your fluctuating like body weight had an effect on how you viewed yourself?
Oh yeah, totally. Like, I mean, well, you already have a negative view of yourself. Everything, generally, most people are born with kind of a negative view of how they think about themselves.
Really?
I don't really know. I mean, I don't really know a bunch of people that don't look in the mirror at some point and have hated something that they've seen. You know what I mean? And then most of the people that I know figured it out and dealt with it. You know what I mean? But a lot of people still struggle with one thing or another. It doesn't have, I mean, it could be anything really. But like, I mean, for me, it was because you don't have the tools, and I guess the fear. You know what I mean? So like, like Netflix and all those documentaries. I remember when I really like went crazy finally, and it was on my 30th birthday, because I remember I woke up and I was like the heaviest I'd ever been, and I told myself like, damn, I'm not 20 anymore, in my 20s. You know what I mean? So I felt like, oh, because you're not in your 20s, like you're already on your spiral down when you turn 30. And you got to get your shit together with your body. You know what I mean? And I was just like, you just feel bad. You don't know that you feel bad yet, but you do. And then that was it. And at that point in time, I'd gone through a couple other things that made me have anger with it. It's just mad at other people, you know what I mean, just for whatever reason it was. And I actually allowed, I mean, it worked, unfortunately. Like, it was a way that the way, when what was it, from 2018 until I'm right when I met you, I was on the very end of it. Well, actually, no.
So we met in 2017.
That's right. So that's like, you were like right after that. I did 70,000 tons. So I was like, I probably gained like another like 10 or 15 pounds from that like last tour that we did. And I was already like a big dude. That's what I'm saying. Like, I got to like 70,000 tons was like my heaviest. I think it was probably like 280, 285 or something like that. Yeah. I just want to say I had a bad picture taken of me. Like, that was one thing. Like, I had it perfectly, like I was leaned over, like on the side of a thing, just like letting it all hang out. It was just a bad photo from the perfect side angle. I was like, damn, like I just didn't even think I was that big. You know what I mean? And then so that really got me. That's what I'm saying. A lot of people that lost the weight, they had that one picture that was finally like, oh no. You know what I mean? And then like, you don't let anybody know, and that sits in for a couple months. And then I turned 30, and then I had a couple falling out with a couple friends that like I lost a bunch of respect for and stuff like that. And I remember like I just got so angry that I thought just not being fat would fix everything. It fixed a lot of things.
Do you feel that your the way you were thinking about yourself about being overweight had an effect on the actual confrontation you had in that moment?
Not necessarily, actually. It was at that point in time, that confrontation was it wasn't really based on my problem, I guess. But that was one of those things where it's just like, like it just, I felt bad because I trusted these people, and like they just go around talking behind your back, like just not even like bad things, just like they just talk shit, you know what I mean? And it's just like, these are your friends. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean, at this point in time. And it's just like, I thought it was because like, oh, the way I look, you know what I mean? I've had people come up to me, it's like, damn, like how are you married to Sabrina? You know what I mean?
Oh, wow.
It's just like, oh,
that's kind of fucked up.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, well, in hindsight, you know what I mean? Like, when it happens in there, it's just like, like, yeah, you know what I mean? But like in hindsight, yeah, it is. But it's just, unfortunately, and that's the struggle I'm having now, is, so when I saw you after that, I had just finished like almost like a 13 or 14 month diet, and I had just finished like this big like athletic competition right before I met you in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I think I remember that.
That's why I was like, I had a small Dickies on.
Yeah.
On that show, I remember I have that button up still. I can't even fit in it now. I couldn't fit in that shirt like last year.
This is that Orphanland tour, right? Where I picked you up.
No. This is the Hypocrisy tour. At the very beginning.
Oh yeah. I remember that one now.
Remember, it was just absolute chaos that first day.
Yeah, I remember.
That's when I saw you that day. That was when I was the thinnest. I just finished that, because I remember I saw you in the Orphanland tour with Tier.
Yeah,
and I think, and I was like, I had just lost, I think, my first 20 or 30 pounds on that one, and then I lost like another 50 like by the time I saw you the next time.
Yeah, I mean, all that like in that amount of time is like a drastic achievement.
Yeah, and it's just like, it's like, so I think the thing that kind of screwed me up after the fact, after I lost the weight, was the way that I and that's what I'm figuring out now a little bit, is like I allowed my mind to create scenarios that would essentially like make me really mad before I went into the gym, and I would create these ridiculous scenarios, like, if you don't finish this lift, like, there's gonna be some crazy article like where you get canceled on Facebook because you're a fat piece of shit, I mean, something ridiculous, right? But I would allow myself to believe it for 30 minutes, an hour, you know what I mean? And it would help me lift. It would help me, you know what I mean? The anger and the intenseness of that allowed me to be almost perfect every day, like at least on the sheet for that. But spending that much time at that level of like intensity and talking to yourself that way is just as bad as looking at yourself, you know what I mean?
Because my next question off of that is, did that have like a significant effect over time of how you were like talking to yourself at home or like in the morning?
Well, yeah,
like
I was just, you know, over time, I'm sure I would just be shorter, you know what I mean? Especially if I was in like the gym or something like that, you know what I mean? Like someone talks to you, you're just like in a completely different zone, you know what I mean? But like that wore off a little bit, but like, because anytime you do something for more than like 20 days, it's a habit or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So like, you know, you build these small residual habits that, you know, and I remember like it you can't just, as much as you think you turn that intensity off when you get out of the gym, like you can see something like, or someone will say something to you and it just like that rage comes back. You know what I mean? So like you have to, that's my, you know, I know how to control it better than I ever have now, but like it's one of those things where it's just like that was such an important tool to keep me focused and consistent, I guess, with just the diet and stuff like that. Like just it's the mental game of like, you know, it's like literally telling yourself you're the worst person on the face of the earth because you can't just sit here and eat this spinach. You know what I mean? Like you're a piece of shit because you can't just like go eat that one donut right now because you don't have the willpower. You're a wuss. Like just talking to yourself, you know what I mean? Psyching yourself up, you know, and everybody's going to go through it. If they have the same problem that I did, they're going to go through it and feel the same way. Then it's just a matter of getting through it and learning from it and trying to adjust the way you do things here and there.
When you were a kid and you were doing like the motocross stuff, do you feel that you were struggling? Do you feel that it was like a significant struggle, like with your body image as you were competing, like on that almost borderline like professional level?
Yeah, well, see, like I remember, like for instance, like when we were like, you know, when I was like 14 or 15, you know, the girls are just starting to come around. All the fast kids walk around without their shirt on. You know what I mean? And like I was thin back then, but I had a tiny little, like when I sat down, you know what I mean? Like I have like a little roll. And I was so self-conscious about that roll, I would never take my shirt off. In hindsight, I was just like, dude, all you need to do is spend 2 or 3 months on a bench press and you look fine. You're like, you know what I mean? Like, but I didn't have anybody that knew how to weight train back then. And then I either starved myself or I, you know, ate a lot. Essentially, like during the week, you know, I would basically eat this tiny little salad and then like a cookie at lunch. And then like I would have like 2 steaks when I come home, you know what I mean? And that was usually that, like, mom and dad are cooking, they grill a bunch of meat, bunch of sides, you can eat till you're full. So like, you know, I just that, and then, you know, just if I had me as my own self now to teach myself just proper training and nutrition back then, I would have made a huge difference in my results because I would have just been stronger and I would have had more energy. So
there's been it. Hold on. Let me word the question that I'm actually trying to ask here. It sounds like at this point, a lot of the reason why you've gotten into weight training and like bodybuilding is to basically stay healthy and create like more healthy habits for yourself.
Yeah.
What is the reason that you weight train specifically to kind of like bulk up as opposed to just like exercising just to stay lean and stay healthy? Do you think that you're
honestly the lean healthy workouts for me aren't as fun because you generally you sweat more and like there's not as much weight. Like I like the actual like the heavier like weight, you know what I mean? So it's just like, and also too, like, you know, like someone like, well, take CrossFit. I don't know how much you know about CrossFit and then bodybuilding and then powerlifting, like the 3 major branches of stuff.
If you want to give a quick breakdown,
Okay, so like Yeah, CrossFit. So if you were to take the average male bodybuilder, the average male power lifter, and the average male like CrossFitter that are like very good in the advanced stage of what they do, maybe not Mr. Olympia status, but like, you know, bodybuilder, they may have done a show or two, you know, power lifters done at least one a competition, CrossFitters done at least a game on the weekend that they paid for. I've never done a weightlifting show, you know what I mean? So I'm out of this. But if you look at these people, the CrossFitters, all the CrossFitters are going to have six packs, and they're going to be like just good in shape people, right? Mm-hmm. And that's because they're doing like a mixture of like bodybuilding and then powerlifting, but also for time and speed and rep. So it's for time. CrossFit is a game, and then the whole reason why you train for CrossFit is all the specific little things they do for the games, and it's all time based. So gotcha. The goal of that is to be the fastest doing these reps. That's why they do the funky like pull-ups, right? Bodybuilder, gotcha. On the other hand, is how perfectly sculpted are you? So they pay extreme focus on very specific lifts, really making the muscle grow. And then the power lifters is all about how much weight you can pick up off the ground. That's why most of them don't have six packs. Most of them are probably almost fat. Like a lot of the power lifters, you know, they're huge. You know what I mean? Those are the
guys who like lift up the semi truck on like one end.
Yeah, the world's strongest man competitions. You know what I mean? Gotcha. The people, anyone who's lifting 300 or 400 pounds over their head standing up. You know what I mean?
And
they're
power
lifters. yeah. And they're going to be, and chances are a power lifter diet starts at 5,000 calories and up.
Jesus.
So it's just like, yeah, no, it's like the eating is a problem. And like, that's what I'm saying. Like a lot of these, that's a whole nother podcast is just like what goes into those sports. But generally like, so I fell into what they call like power building, I guess is where it is. But like, so that's in between powerlifting and bodybuilding. So you're doing exercises, which is essentially controlled high rep exercises with as much resistance as you can to grow the muscle, tear it down, grow it. And then you test your strength with the powerlifting, like the big three: bench press, squat, deadlift. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like a lot of people do unknowingly are power builders. Because they're trying to increase their lift while also trying to look better at the same time. And sometimes that's not the fastest way to do it. Sometimes the fastest way to do it is to eat and jack up your strength and then stop training like that and then cut back and change up your training. So you're doing like the high rep burn stuff. And then you're starting to melt all the skin off. Then you move into like the power, like the bodybuilding, and then the more CrossFit stuff. Like the competition I did before I saw you in 2019, it was a lot of like burpees for time and like stuff that you would just leave like just completely
burpees are insane.
But that's what I'm saying. So like essentially like the way that I learned is if you're not sweating and you're not breathing, you're not losing weight. So you can technically weightlift without sweating and you can technically weightlift without breathing as much. Like, you know what I mean? That's powerlifting. That's the people who are like, oh, I'm going to eat a Pop-Tart and wait 5 minutes and I'm going to lift 600 pounds once. You know what I mean? And it's like a religious experience when you do that. You know what I mean? Versus the people that are doing, you know, I focus generally a little bit more on the bodybuilding side now that like I've kind of gotten to a point where like the weight I can lift, I don't want to do it all the time because it's just like, I don't need to. I get a better workout doing heavier weight or less heavier weight, you know, more times. You can burn if I were to power lift for a day, like I wouldn't be as sore as if I did like bodybuilding exercise. So it's like you can't feel it the next day or the day after that. Like you didn't do enough work.
Gotcha. So
and then the lifting too just keeps me like that. If I've not been as consistent eating, I've always at least been consistent in the gym. So like at least, you know, like if you're trying to do the two in tandem, not having both of them slip, it's easier to get back on. You know what I mean? Because now it's just like, oh, my weight's going down because I ate like shit for last week. And then, you know, now it's like, oh, I got to clean up my diet because my performance will go up in the gym, not just the way you look. You know what I mean? Now you're just like getting into the stats and the lifts and stuff like that.
And just like that, we've changed spaces.
We did. instead of saying that we had technical difficulties, we'll just say that we used special effects to just, change locations and change costumes.
Yeah.
This is totally not, a day later. This is the same time. We were just talking about how you basically had a support system with Kevin and Sabrina, as in like you guys were all going to the gym together. You guys were all working out together and encouraging one another. And that having that kind of support system is really important, especially when someone decides to make such a drastic change like you did with like deciding to work out regularly and deciding to eat healthily.
Yeah, I'm not even sure, because I had that. I'm not even so sure I can comment on what it takes to do it without having that. Is as that's how important it is, I guess, is to have somebody that's in your corner, essentially, that like, especially with food, you know what I mean? So like, when I was going kind of crazy, Sabrina was eating kind of the same stuff. Like, so like, we didn't have a lot of like snacks and stuff in the house. And like, someone who's not in it to do it that hard, it's difficult for them to also give those things up, because it helps somebody else out. You know what I mean? So it's just like, there's sacrifices everywhere. I mean, even when we were super tight, I remember like, like we would go out for lunch on the weekends with Kevin, and we'd be very like, oh, like, almost need to like go to Publix and cook. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, at least at my peak of just like how like hardcore I was doing it. You know what I mean? It's a everyone around you has to be dialed in. I mean, the people that are doing this for a living are their whole life is that. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of the the ministerial people, their significant others might not have a job, but their job is to help make food. And
because you were saying earlier that like, just having like a massive calorie intake, especially for people who are working to like build up their strength, is really important. So having that constant caloric intake throughout the day, I can only imagine like the amount of time it takes
like,
to
just
like,
the
do
time.
that prep.
The meal prepping. Geez, like, I mean, it's just like, that's one thing. It's just like, meal prepping works, but it sucks to get into it, because then it's just like, the dieting is easily the hardest part. It's the most time consuming, and it's the least enjoyable.
I mean, I like the eating part of it, because the food is always fun. Actually, I had a question for you before we had our little short break. We were talking about briefly about like your presentation on stage after you decided to switch gears, but did you feel that the way you were looking at yourself after you started to like notice like a significant difference, you started to slim up, started to get more tone, and you started to build up your strength, did you notice a difference in how you carried yourself in a business aspect behind the scenes? So like, say, as a tour manager or getting business done for Seven Kingdoms.
Well, you feel a little more confident. At least for me, I felt a little more confident in my own skin, I guess, as I got better. But I know that I also was to the point where I couldn't see it, because I was paying a lot of attention to everything every day. Like, you look at yourself in the mirror, and because you see it every day, you can't see the changes. So you see the changes mostly like when you put old clothes on, and you're like, whoa, this is really baggy. You know what I mean? And then like, because it's like, as you get lean, like, it's funny, because looking back on pictures now, I was like, oh my God, I almost had a six pack. Like, and it's just like, oh, like, I didn't think that I looked like that. But now looking back, it was just like, ooh, like, holy shit. Like, and now it's a realization. It's like, oh my God, I remember being in that skin, and I didn't feel like how I looked even then.
I think that's something important to point out for anybody, in any situation. It's really hard to see the achievements that one has made in like anything like in the moment, because like you said, you see it every single day. Things are changing so minutely every second, every minute, every hour
Yeah, yeah.
that you're literally in your own skin watching these changes, and you just don't see everything because it's going at a snail's pace. But like when you take, time to like look at a picture from like 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, you're like, oh wow, there is a drastic change. And I think taking the time for anybody to pause every now and again and kind of just reassess those changes and like look back to be like, oh, what have I done in the past 6 months, what have I done in the past years, can help put things into perspective, so you don't kind of just get stuck in like a loop of just negativity.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just it's tough. I mean, I guess they would call that body dysmorphia. But it's just like, you have that, and the same thing happens on the flip side. It's like, if you are happy and you just like food, I always say that the most dangerous gain is that 5 pounds a year, 5 to 10 pounds a year that you put on, because you don't see it. It's just all of a sudden you're like filling out a snug extra large shirt, and you're just like, what the hell happened? You know what I mean? Like, we're all like, why am I so round?
Like, what's going on?
And yeah, and you can't like, you don't see it on the way up, and you also don't see it on the way down. So you have to, like, even now, like I haven't weighed myself, but I know like my weightlifting belt, for example, like my goal, like I probably won't even weigh myself until I know I'm better on my weightlifting belt. You know what I mean? I'm moving belt loops in. You know what I mean? As I was saying, when I was my leanest, like I could get into like the 4th bowl. Right now, like the 2nd one's snug, so I probably put 2 inches around my gut in the last like year and a half. But at the same time, it's just like that just happens. You know what I mean? It's just and then you can't like really beat yourself up too much about it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You brought up body dysmorphia. Have you ever felt like when you looked in a mirror, like in the moment, like now or in the past, have you ever felt like you've struggled with actual like body dysmorphia, where like, say you saw yourself and like you were jacked and people were saying, oh man, Camden, you look like, you belong in Manowar, and you're like, oh man, I don't know if I see that. Like, have you had that issue?
No, right in my leanest. Like I was like, I remember taking the pictures that I still look back on now and being like, I was like, oh, okay. Like I could, like, for instance, like I have a couple pictures of like my shirt off, and it's just like, if you like, and like you can see the shadows of at least the top 4 abs that are there, and then the bottom 2 are starting there, but they disappear because I was heavy enough and I lost enough weight. So I discovered I have a skin problem now. So like when I was 186, I had loose skin in my stomach, like enough to be like, oh shit, like you're thin enough to see where you came from. You know what I mean? Because like you have kind of a 6-pack, but it disappears, it pools a little bit. So like I said, like when I was racing, I had that tiny little muffin top, right? Mm-hmm. And it's just like nothing I could do. Even remember, I busted my ass for like a year and a half straight, and I still couldn't get that tiny last little bit off. And that's where I kind of like, like I was a little bit burnt out. It's just like, I gotta eat regular food just to try it again. You know what I mean? Like your reward meals. You know what I mean? I hadn't had a cheat day in like almost a year.
Oh wow!
At least, yeah. I mean, I was really like in straight. So like, I remember being kind of disappointed that I put all that work in. Not and it like I discounting the fact that I just lost 80 pounds. You know what I mean? I was upset that I had that little bit left, and all that effort didn't get that last little bit. And
it's really interesting that you were focusing on that one little bit.
Yeah, and then now in hindsight, I'm like, I just like to get back to that. That's acceptable to me now, having kind of gone back, relaxed with the whole thing a little bit, still kept my lifting up, But then again, the things that I learned during that diet period have made good, solid changes in my life. Even if I eat a little bit more, like we don't eat fast food hardly ever. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Unless we're on tour. But then like when we're home, like Sabrina and I kind of mostly stick to a very pescatarian diet when we're at home, at least.
Which
So,
is very
you know, I
lean
mean,
fat and a lot of nutrients, a lot of healthy,
yeah, yeah. Like essentially,
stuff.
like I try to make sure that my meats are lean, so that way I'm getting my fat from like avocado or some cheese, or you know,
All the good
just
fats that you need.
good fat. Yeah, yeah. Salmon. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like if I
God,
have a fatty
salmon.
fish, yeah, it's delicious. So it's just like you know, I like tonight we're having. I think we're having. I have some tilapia pieces. We're gonna have some edamame, which will have olive oil on it, and then I think Sabrina's got some udon noodles. We're just gonna have a couple of them.
All right, so basically, I'm gonna be coming over for dinner in like 10 minutes when this is done.
Yeah, I mean, it's like that's what I'm saying. It's like, and you know, I remember like when you used to go from, you know, you eat out for lunch every day. You're having a, you know, 2 egg avocado, 2 pieces of sourdough bread, toast, melted cheese sandwich for breakfast, public sub for lunch, another public sub for dinner, or you know, spaghetti, and then ice cream every day. You know, it's you pack that like eighth of a pound on every day. You know, like when you eat like 3,500. That's what I'm saying. I think I was probably eating between 3,500 and 4,000. And like people don't realize, like if you just like food and you're like you grew up around it, like eating, like 2,000 calories is almost nothing. Like I usually feel like I'm still hungry if I eat 2,000 calories. Like especially now, like I'm a little bit heavier than I used to be. So like you know, like I can really feel that. And like even yes, like I woke up. I've been back on since we got off the cruise. Like this week, I've straightened up a couple of days, and I'm not really counting calories, but I know kind of what I'm eating, and I backed off the carbs a little bit. And like today, like I waited till 2 to eat, but I was just like, oh my god! And you know, as soon as
You're
I
like
finished my
dying the
egg,
entire time.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. I hadn't had any carbs for lunch, so it's just like as soon as I finished my egg and my avocado, like I'm just like, is there a pretzel anywhere? Like, you know what I mean? You feel your body need like is used to having it, and now you're taking it away slowly. So it's you know the hardest part is the transitioning back into it the way we want to do it.
How do you feel? How do you feel when you go to say like more personal, like get-togethers? Like now that you've focused on, you've basically you have this new routine. Like just talking to you now compared to like when I first met you like a couple of years ago, you definitely have this subtle air more of like, just confidence about you. It's a very subtle thing because you've always been a very confident person. Like you've always been like, oh, I know this. This is what I could do. You're very self-aware, but it's a very subtle thing that you have. But again, most of how our interactions have been, like we're friends, but it's more of like a professional kind of like interaction that we've had. How do you feel? How do you feel your image has changed in more like familial settings, like when you go to see like you know cousins, mom, dad, Sabrina's family, friends, things that are more casual?
Most of the time, I mean, I don't really see a ton. I mean, we're pretty like tight, like in like our circle, so we don't really like. I don't have a ton of like friends that I hang out with on a daily basis. I mean, it's the band, and then my wife, and then I work with my dad, my stepmom, my mom, and my stepdad. They see me. My aunt will see me, but I mean, they all know they all saw it. They all commented, especially on the way down. They were like, "Wow, you know, well, same thing. Wow, Caitlin, wow, wow, wow." So, and that also, along with body dysmorphia, as you're making that crazy progress, you lose sight of everybody tells you, "Oh my God, what are you doing?" And then that's what I'm saying. The second that you're able to show people that you lost 30 pounds to prove it, lost 50 pounds to prove it, lost 80 pounds to prove it, you start getting messaged by people who are in the same position as you. And it's funny now, actually, I'm kind of reviewing that. It's like, you know, you ask, well, how did you do it? What did you eat? And I told so many people like exactly how I did it, and they can't do it because they just don't have the ability to stick to it. And that's literally the hardest part. It is literally counting your calories, understanding what your body, everybody's body is going to be different. So you're going to need to eat slightly different depending on what your body is. That takes 2 or 3 weeks just to figure out and get an idea of it. You know what I mean? Like people, I signed up for one of those month-long fitness challenges, right? in order to change your body the way that I was able to in 30 days is like the way I did that one fitness challenge. At the end of that, like I was on all the supplements that they recommended, which is like $200 for the month's supply of the shit.
Oh wow.
That was like, yeah. I was on in order to work out twice every day. Like I did my HIIT exercise, which took about 45 minutes in the morning, went to work, came back home, and then weight trained on top of it. Did like the weights, because that's what I'm saying. You're doing like more of a sweat, get your it's still muscle building, like you're doing push-ups and burpees and stuff like that, but it's not like bench pressing 230, 300 pounds. You know what I mean? That's not weight training. So I would do that in the morning and then come home and weight train, and I would do that 6 days a week. And then they tell you to take a walk on the 7th day on the program. But I remember like I was the most sore, and I remember I've been training for like a whole like year and a half nonstop. And when I started that program and did those double workouts per day, like the 3rd or 4th day, like I could barely walk. Like I was so sore, like just, it was another level of stuff. So then like, that's when the supplements started kicking in and they were in my system. Like I had this thing called an overtraining solution. It was just a thing you put in your shake, but it really helped. I was on a really high potency turmeric. I was on fish oil. I was on MCT oil because I was doing keto. Mm-hmm. I had a protein supplement, so I took 3 scoops. I had a 1 scoop protein shake at the beginning of the day, and then a 2 scoop protein shake at the end of the day. So that's what I'm saying. I was taking three scoops of protein every day for a month.
That's a lot of protein.
And it's like, well, but it's just like I mean, I guess I could make room and afford it now, but I don't want to spend $200 a month on supplements in order to work out twice a day, because it's that lifestyle. I like the way it made me look, but like it's kind of unsustainable to do the 2-a-day stuff, especially while I was touring. That's why that's what I'm saying. Like basically from last August until now, like I probably gained like another like 10 pounds or something, maybe, just because like I haven't been able to stay at home and have a solid, even if it was 5 days out of the week for the last year, where I could have had my normal meals. You know what I mean? That would have been my gain right there. But it's just like, it's just you're on the road. Anyone knows when you're on the road in a van specifically, you know what I mean? Like it's just very hard. And at one point in time, you're like, you would just rather have the decent tasting thing, even if it makes you feel like shit, just because you already feel like shit and you're tired. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and
who's
definitely
gonna go to
having that.
Who's going to go to and like ask for a non-seasoned piece of grilled chicken and like shitty rice and pay $15 for it? You know what I mean? So it's just like, now you're in the van and it's just like, I want as much food as this $10 will give me.
Yeah, no, definitely having that healthy lifestyle while being like, in a touring band, especially if you're not at like, House of Blues or like stadium level, it's really difficult because just being able to like afford to feed yourself half the time.
And even on the hypocrisy tour, like there was so much crazy bullshit going on that like, even though I had the money to eat very well, I had no time, because I was constantly dealing with like just some sort of other bullshit. You know what I mean? I was the guy. Like it all falls on me. So like I'm the only person that would take care of it. You know what I mean?
The joys of being the tour manager.
Yeah. And then then at that time it's like, oh, like I was just so stressed out. It's just like, man, that burger is just delicious. Mm-hmm. Like that's what's going to make me happy today. So I had to do it. You know what I mean? And that's one of those things. And that's what I'm saying. Like that's where it's just like, it's like I made a conscious decision to not beat myself up too much for it. You know what I mean? And that's where I circle back into, even if my diet's not been as consistent recently, I've always been consistent with my lift. I've never missed, like I didn't miss, like unless I was on tour, like I've never missed a whole week.
That was going to be my question to you. Is like, when you're on tour, are you able to do any kind of exercises at all?
Yeah. So like if I can't make it to a gym, I'll usually do like at least like I'll be like I at least did 100 push-ups today. You know what I mean? Just to be like, And then I remember like when I was doing that, like 100 push-ups should be like a warm-up. Like if you're really like getting it done, like you should be able to do 100 push-ups like in the morning, and then like go work out in the evening and not even feel it. That's when you know your body and like your chest is in condition. Like I'm not sure, I would probably affect it right now because I haven't been on it. But like the very first hypocrisy tour I did 100 push-ups, or I got up to 100 push-ups by like, I think halfway through the tour. And I was able to do that literally almost every day. This tour, I think I did it like every other day on average, but I still did like a set of 50 and then a set of 50, and then I got distracted.
Because then, like, you know, you actually had to like start taking care of all like the tasks.
Crazy, but like, and then that's the thing is like the time whenever I get 2 hours on the road, especially if I'm TMing, you know what I mean, or like we get 2 hours where like we don't have to do anything. Kevin and I find a gym, or I find a gym and I go. Like, I mean, I did the first gym I went to was in Toronto. I went to one in Winnipeg. Yeah, that might have been the last time I did it. I think I lifted twice on the hypocrisy tour, maybe 3 times.
Oh wow!
But definitely, but I found it. You know what I mean? I still went and I did it. You know, I hit some stuff. So like, even if I went like a couple of weeks, like I never go over a couple of weeks without touching like actual like iron. You know what I mean?
Which is good.
Even on the Beast and Black tour, we did it. You know.
Yeah, which, you know, it goes back to like a couple of points ago where you were talking about how difficult it is for a lot of people to do what you did, because you basically had to change your entire lifestyle in order to make sure that you maintain this, you know, and like even when you're on tour and like you have all these other like, you know, obligations, and you know, when you're TMing, when you're on tour, you know, even as like the, you know, the band, the artist, like you're pretty much working like all day. But if you're the TM, you're working all day plus. I've watched you work. So like you're constantly doing all this, but like you went out of your way to find time as much as you could to maintain that lifestyle choice that you made, which is to maintain that healthy physique.
Yeah, it's the TM plus merch. That
TM
really
plus merch, Jesus.
Yeah, because that's the thing. If I just TM'd, I would have all the time in the world to see I would have the 2 or 3 hours that most single job crew members get. You know what I mean? Because essentially, like as soon as they got done sound checking, that's it. I just need to be back maybe before doors, maybe. I don't even know. That's what I'm saying. Like if you're in merch, that's what I'm saying. TM and merch, you got to be there all day, make sure everything's fine. And then everything has to be ready before doors, and then at doors, you have to be there to sell everything. So I have no time to leave. Guitar tech, front of house guy, as soon as they're done with sound check, they can break until the show, until the headliner goes on. So they're essentially off from 4 p.m. to
7
o'clock. You know what I mean? Yeah, you get 5 hours to do whatever the hell you want.
I mean, it's definitely a lot of hats that you end up wearing. And again, going back to like my initial introduction to you is like the fact that you bust your ass doing literally everything that you do, and you do everything phenomenally. By the way, I just want to like put that out there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's not fun. I enjoy doing it, but it's not fun, I guess. I enjoy what I like about it most is that it seems that a lot of people don't know how to do it that well, or there's always something. Every band that I've worked for, when they talk about other TMs, they always talk about just something that I don't know. It's like, you know, it's just like they act like, you know, I guess like hot shot's not the right word, but like they're too busy even to answer questions for the band. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, and it's just like, you know,
which doesn't make sense because like they're hired basically by the band to like run everything. So if you're not able to, you know, communicate with the band and the people like involved with the tour, it kind of just defeats the purpose. You are just a very down to earth human being. So like you understand that like everyone's a person, but you're also very organized, which is really important.
Well, I mean, I think doing it for my own band has given me a little bit of an edge because I'm also the artist and I know how they feel. You know what I mean? And I understand the mindset of the artist versus just like, I mean, imagine just a manager who isn't in the band coming and living on the bus, being a manager, and all he knows is being a manager. You know what I mean? They're never going to understand why it's a big deal that, I don't know, I don't even know how to make a scenario because it's just like I have never really been in that position. You know what I mean?
Yeah, just like the idea of like being on the road, driving from like location to location, or doing that, you know.
And I've been on the road too when I didn't tour manage, and like I was like, hey, like this seems like it's really expensive. Can you show me your sheets, like so I can see like how much money's coming in? They're like, oh, we'll figure it out when we get home. It's just like, what?
You're like, no.
Like you should be able to know right now how much money we're losing.
Yeah.
And I like being able to do that. Like when anyone ever asks, like, you know, the band's like, hey, like, how was it tonight? I'll be like, oh, by the way, you're going to break even in show 4. You know what I mean?
And like stuff like that makes everybody that you deal with so appreciative of the fact that like you have that insight from like both perspectives.
Yeah, but then also too, it makes the artist feel better. And it makes them relax. So when the artist that's hiring you is relaxed, it makes your job better because they're not wound up trying to find something. You know what I mean? So it's just like the hardest thing I have a problem with on the road is when there's a manager back home and there's a little bit of a disconnect between the band, the manager, and the tour manager. So what happens is like essentially they hand off all the responsibility to someone who's not there to see everything that happens daily. Then say you go through a stressful situation, tour manager and band, they have an understanding. And then you have to explain the fucked up situation that happened over and over and over again for someone that is managing to understand. You know what I mean? So you have to live through it twice. You know what I mean? Versus just dealing with the band and having that kind of camaraderie. You know what I mean? That's always been the most thing is when there's just another nose in there. And it's just like, I'm talking to the boss. The boss is right here. You're not the boss. You're just someone who's asking questions, making sure I'm doing my job. I know I'm doing my job because the boss is seeing me doing my job. So fuck off. You know what I mean? So that's like, they've always, even if they're nice, they've always just simply added more work.
And imagine like, I imagine like we've talked a little bit how like your perspective on yourself once you've kind of like made that whole when you decided to start getting to like the healthier lifestyle. I imagine your confidence in dealing with those kind of people has kind of like increased.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wouldn't even say that my physical appearance has increased my confidence when it comes to the way that I tour manage, especially when things are like more so when things are like on a sheet. Like if there's ever like a discrepancy on like my finals, for example, like I trust my experience having used my sheets for years and my process of how I log expenses and income and this and that. I trust my process more now to save me time and not overcount money. Like you can count it, like how do you count it once and not look at it again? And you know what's in there, you know what I mean? And I remember my first several tours, I would just count over and over and over and over and over and over and make sure everything was right all the time, every day. And that takes up a lot of time, you know what I mean? So as I've gotten better, it's not so much my physical appearance, but it's been able to strategize. It's the same lesson. You know what I mean? It's the same lesson of sticking to something, being consistent with it, and doing good with it, and then always improving. It's still the same lesson of, even if you can't see yourself get skinnier, the scale says it. You know what I mean? And that's also a bad thing too. Is like when you get you weigh yourself. Everybody says you shouldn't weigh yourself every day. I did. I weighed myself morning and night every day. I had 2 weigh-ins, and I obsessed over it. But I'm a numbers guy. So I can see how it goes like this. And weight loss goes up, way down, up, way down, up, way down. You know what I mean? So if you miss the day where you're down and you go up, up, it doesn't look like anything. That's why I want to see all the data. You know what I mean? And plot the zigzag all the way down.
I imagine it's the zigzag is just like the fact that your body is constantly like adjusting, and like you're not going to eat the same amount of calories every day. You're not going to eat the same amount of food, so your body's going to be processing things completely differently.
But the
So
idea
that totally makes sense.
Yeah. Well, the idea though is when you're on a diet, you get really consistent with it. So when you take something away or you add something, you can see it show up on the scale. And that's the hardest part to get is like, this is what you eat. That's it. You know what I mean? Because when you do that for like a week, it's really easy to be like, oh, I'm going to add a half a cup of rice in, or I'm going to take a half a cup of rice out and watch how that affects your body for 2 days. And then you adjust from there. Like that's a really big deal. Like you can't even give somebody the right advice on what they need until they're pinned straight for like a week or two. So it's almost like it's really a weekly adjustment. Like you have to look at it inside of a week. And that's why they tell people to weigh in at the beginning of the week, end of the week, or like once a week, essentially. So it's like every Monday you weigh in.
Gotcha.
And then you have to stay accountable the rest of the week. I guess weighing in every day helped me stay accountable that day. Because like, people, if they only weigh in once a week, they might get a little loose for the end of it. And like, if you're really trying to look at it inside a week, man, you could ruin an entire week in one day if you just go crazy. You know what I mean?
That totally makes sense.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. And even now, like I'm trying to tighten up a little bit, but even still, it's like I'm revisiting the not fun shit that you have to go through in order to get the result. You know what I mean? And especially as you're happy, and I'm not using that kind of negative outlook on how I look as my root this time. It's hard for me to latch on to something that makes me feel like it's truly important. You know what I mean? And I'm still searching for that kind of thing to grasp onto. Because like you can do it without grasping onto that one thing, but it makes it a lot easier if you can grab onto that one thing, hold it while you're doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're holding on to. You're looking to find that one piece of like really strong motivation that keeps you going and continuing to do the thing that you're doing, especially if it's like literally a lifestyle choice to maintain, you know, being healthy. But Camden, thank you so much for taking the time twice, to kind of open up and share,
it's fun
about what you've gone through.
Actually, it's ironic that I'm trying to like restart kind of some of this stuff, and then this came up, so it's probably helping me more than I even realized.
Yeah, well then it's perfect timing. The universe kind of just hands us, things when we need it, I think, to get a little spiritual out here.
Yeah.
I truly believe. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just saying, it's just like, I mean, it is true. I mean, it's like usually, I don't know. I think you keep a positive outlook about it. I've always had my most lucky things happen then. So that's what I'm trying to do this time around. If I could do it, that'll make me, it'll probably make me a little bit healthier here on the way down than it did last time. So I'm trying to do it in both of them this time. You know what I mean? But just with a little bit more of a kind of a positive outlook.
Well, I'm going to be in your corner because I 100% believe in you, my friend, because you literally are the kind of person that can do anything that you set your mind to, and your actions, speak for themselves.
It's tough. You just got to set your mind to it. That's the hardest part. And then following through. That's
follow
really
through.
Tough. Yeah.
Well, I truly believe that the more that we as a society feel comfortable opening up about our struggles, the more it will help others to realize that they are not alone. Everyone has the inner strength to face whatever life puts along their path. So thank you for taking the time to chat, Camden, and thank you to everyone that has tuned into this episode. If anyone watching finds that they are struggling with their mental health, please do not be afraid to reach out to your friends, family, or a mental health professional. I'll place a link in the description of this video that will have some information and connection to further resources. And until next time, remember, you always have the strength to conquer your battlefield.